The entire world was destined for destruction at the hands of the monsters emerging from the blood gates, and he was the one to blame? After enduring so much pain and humiliation, after finally grasping the hope of living a peaceful life following his mother's healing, the rage coursing through Jihyun could not be quenched by the death of even 1,000 beasts. The only reason he continued to fight was for his sick mother. Lee Ha-yeon, the head of the Korean Association, had promised to keep healing her. Moreover, these monsters were familiar to Jihyun. He had been slaying them for the past 5 years of his imprisonment in the blood gates. The good news was that there was a limit to how many could emerge from one portal. Eventually, Jihyun had slain all the monsters in the vicinity. Suddenly, a bullet pierced through his head. Blood oozed from the gaping wound. One of the soldiers in the Korean army asked his commander whether they should open fire on him since he had only been killing monsters. But the order from the government was clear: apprehend the monster until the hunters arrived. An artillery barrage erupted, tearing Jihyun's body apart. He screamed, pleading for them to stop, but it was all in vain. After some time, the area was littered with the corpses of soldiers. The reason Jihyun lost consciousness was that the mana seeping into his body from the blood gates was trying to transform him into a monster. Yet, what he saw brought him back to his senses. His school friend's head dangled from a bone blade, a haunting memory flashing through Jihyun's mind. While his classmates tormented him, there was a light-haired boy in his class, his only true friend who genuinely wanted to help. This friend possessed the unique ability of his right eye, which could record everything he saw, collecting evidence against their tormentors. However, one day he ended up in the hospital. Someone had ripped out his eye. Jihyun felt an overwhelming guilt towards his friend, knowing this was the doing of that bastard Taesu. He longed for vengeance. But his friend had told him not to even think about it. Life is already miserable, so there's nothing special about it. A scream of pain and regret escaped Jihyun's chest. The monsters that began to appear again rushed at him. After cutting them in half, Jihyun rushed in rage to destroy everyone who appeared from the new gates. At that time, the president's office was discussing that this monster was responsible for the appearance of the bloody gates. The situation began to get out of control, and the bloody gates were now appearing in other countries. It was necessary to contact the International Bureau of Hunters because this could not be postponed any longer. Korea had lost all its hunters. All the world's strongest hunters received a request to destroy the monster responsible for the cataclysm. China, Russia, USA. 5 years spent in the gates felt like a hell. Jihyun fought without a chance to eat, drink, or sleep. His body could not succumb to death, as the mana within kept forcing it to regenerate, yet it threatened to hasten his transformation into a monster. Only 2 faces anchored him to sanity: the lifeless visage of his mother and the face of the bastard who had caused this torment. But now, he wondered if his resolve had weakened simply because he had exacted his revenge. Jihyun feared that the mana leaking from the gates would steal his consciousness forever, because he had already killed innocent people. Thus, he fought monsters far from the gates, believing that perhaps slaying them could atone for his sins. In the next instant, his body was shredded into fragments. A severed eye gazed upon the man descending from the heavens. The gates had emerged on Christmas, springing up from nowhere in various places. The pastor who was preaching at that moment awakened the power. He was sure that it was the will of God. In the largest church in America, which had 100,000 believers, 138 people were slightly injured, and not one person died. He became the world's first awakened SSS rank. As a child, Jihyun had idolized this hero, Stephen Lucas, the SSS rank hunter, #1 in America. What the hell was he doing in Korea? Lucas touched Jihyun's body, and it fell apart again. Yet the mana oozing from the bloody gates fueled him, allowing for rapid regeneration. Lucas wanted to push Jihyun into the gate with his ability, but he managed to slow down a little with his foot and fell before reaching the gate. All awakened people with the help of mana can communicate with others without a translator, so he turned to Lucas, saying that he was not a monster. It worked. The American hunter stopped his attack. Jihyun begged to listen to him, and after his story, Lucas hugged him and said, "It must have been very hard for you." Lucas asked his name and continued talking. His goal is to save as many people as possible. That is why he fights. And today, he had to kill many people for this goal. And to atone for his guilt, Lucas engraved the names of each of them on his body. He can help Jihyun destroy all the monsters. But during this time, a disaster will spread across the globe. and many people will die. So sorry, Lucas said, engraving Jihyun's name on his body, after which he activated his ability. I will kill you to save others, Lucas said. At this time, Lee Ha-yeon was healing Jihyun's mother while watching what was happening through the screen. Blood was streaming from her nose, eyes, and corners of her mouth. Meanwhile, Ruzana Vladimirova, a cis-ranked top 1 in Russia, was also watching everything through the screens. The reason she can't do anything is the Arctic monster. All the hunters in Russia are trying to contain the monster. Suddenly, the door opened and Tae-soo walked in. He offered the Queen of Russia to catch the Arctic monster. The Arctic monster, it was the first SSS rank monster. When it appeared, the Russian base at the North Pole was destroyed. The Russian government, who knew nothing about the gate and the monster, mobilized all their forces, but they were unable to suppress it. In the end, half of the nuclear bombs in the country were used. However, the monster did not die from the blow that did not contain mana. And because of the radioactive contamination, the north of Russia turned into a country of monsters. As a result, in order to restore their resources, they declared war on America. I will catch this monster, Tae-soo said, but the queen only laughed. A S-rank hunter will never defeat a monster. With these words, she activated her ability. But Tae-soo continued. He said that he had the strength to do so. Suddenly, the queen noticed a strange aura around Tae-soo. What are you, she asked. In any case, if Tae-soo succeeds, she promised him half of the mana stones from the monster, after which the white-haired hunter left. Lucas knelt down to say a prayer while Jihyun's body was falling apart. From a small particle that was carried away by the wind, he began to regenerate again. Jihyun didn't know what to do because he had no chance against Lucas one-on-one. Finding himself behind the guy, Lucas was about to strike, but Jihyun got ahead of him by piercing his head with a bone blade. But it didn't work. Lucas hugged Jihyun, saying that he could hurt him as much as he wanted if it would make him feel better. And even if he regenerated, Lucas promised that he would kill him without suffering, as long as it took. Jihyun wanted to scream, but he couldn't. Every second was painful for him. Jihyun survived only thanks to revenge. However, Lucas's instant fatal attack forced him to start regeneration from scratch, which easily surpassed the pain that was before. And the pain went beyond what was acceptable. Why should he feel so much pain? Why should he suffer? What did he do wrong? This needs to stop. Lucas is right. If he lives, then many innocent people will really die. And even if he dies, Mom will still live, and that's enough. Fuck you. Having absorbed a huge amount of mana from the blood gate, Jihyun, who had lost his mind, put the mana into his punch, piercing Lucas's body. The drone that was filming their fight broadcasted the image to the entire world. The mana strike was so powerful that the building where Lee-hyun was treating Jihyun's mother was cut in half. She fell to the floor, exhausted, bleeding. The treatment was over. Jihyun's body changed slightly, indicating that his transformation into a monster was progressing. Even Lucas was surprised by the ominous mana emanating from him. But that didn't change anything, activating his killer attack. He hugged Jihyun, but he wasn't going to give up and stabbed Lucas with his blade, who was already behind him. He thrust his hand into his head, but Jihyun cut off it. Hand continued to squeeze Jihyun's brain, causing him severe pain. In order to free himself from the ability of the American hunter, Jihyun tore his head apart. Lucas's power allowed him to hear the sounds of those who suffer, those who are in despair, but he also hears the sounds of those saved and those who believe in him, which gives him even more power. With these words, he activated another of his abilities, trapping Jihyun. Continuing to cry, Lucas began to squeeze the body of the monster, crushing it like a tomato. But the regeneration did not stop, and Jihyun fully recovered, trying to deliver a powerful blow to Lucas's head. Lucas was shocked. Is this really what God wants from him? Jihyun, who had already rushed to attack, was stopped by one touch. Jihyun's hands dug into his chest, tearing himself apart. He repeated a verse from the Bible. Lucas took over Jihyun's body with his ability. Repeating lines from the Bible, he continued to tear himself apart. Jihyun could not understand what was happening to his body. It was so painful. Jihyun's body, crucified by his own hands, hung in the air and the next moment simply disappeared, leaving a bloody stain. Mana went to the place where the body shreds were. Jihyun regenerated again. Without waiting for the body to fully recover, Lucas called him and threw him down, simultaneously breaking an entire building with his body. Flying through the building, Jihyun found himself in the sewers, covered in concrete debris. His mother stood in front of him.